And I would like to welcome everyone to our session on coal. My name is Jim Probst, and I am the co-state coordinator for West Virginia, and I also co-lead the Coal Country Action Team. I'm very pleased that Brandon Dennison, the founder and CEO of Coalfields Development in Huntington, West Virginia, has agreed to be with us today to discuss his work in finding ways to help revive the coal fields through some very creative and sustainable approaches. I will turn it over to Brandon in a few minutes, but first I am going to discuss briefly the current state of coal. If you have questions for either of us, would you please enter them in the chat, and we will get to as many as possible at the end of the session. Okay. I've got a few slides here. They mostly are here to help illustrate some of my points. I would like to make one thing clear from the outset. My concerns for coal are for coal workers and the communities where they live. I am in no way advocating for bailing out coal companies. Between 2010 and early 2019, 546 coal-fired power plants were retired in this country. Another 13 are slated for closure in 2020. There are presently no plans to build any new coal-fired power plants in this country. Coal's share of electric generation fell to less than 25% last year, and during one 30-day period this spring fell to 16%. During that same period, 6,000 miners were either laid off or lost their jobs. That's over 10% of the workforce. Renewables are set to pass coal this year as a higher percentage of our energy generation mix. Since the current occupant of the White House arrived, promising to revive the coal industry, there have been 11 coal companies that have declared bankruptcy. One coal company, Murray Energy, the nation's fourth largest producer, pleaded with the Trump administration for a bailout for the industry, asking current bankruptcy proceedings to be absolved of their $6 million a month obligation for retiree health benefits. The National Mining Association has been asking Congress to remove their member companies' obligations to pay into the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund, which supports miners with black lung disease when the companies they work for have gone bankrupt. This is at a time when coal has been found to be an essential industry and miners are having to work underground in less than what we would call social distancing situations. And they've also asked to remove their obligations to pay into the Abandoned Mine Lands Fund. A portion of the AML fund would provide funding for the Reclaim Act, which CCL is supporting in our upcoming lobby day. I would like to remind, one thing we need to remember as members of CCL is that the Remi Study says that our fee and dividend policy will result in our country ceasing to use coal to produce electricity within 10 years of enactment. Since 90% of the coal mined in this country is used for this purpose, fee and dividend will essentially be the final nail in the coffin for the coal industry. I would like to pause for a moment and express my appreciation to CCL for elevating the Reclaim Act to a co-primary ask for our upcoming lobby days. The act will distribute $1 billion from the existing AML funds for accelerated reclamation of degraded mine areas with the intent that these projects be tied to long-term economic development projects. Before I turn things over to Brandon, I would like to quote from my friend Jeremy Richardson at the Union of Concerned Scientists, whose writings on these issues I highly recommend. Quote, many organizations, advocates, and activists are fighting for an economic recovery that is just and equitable and also clean and sustainable. The transition to a more sustainable economy will only worsen the economic landscape for coal, and we have a responsibility to ensure that the workers and communities are not left behind. So now I'd like to turn it over to someone who has spent the last 10 years working diligently to ensure just that. Brandon?
Thank you, Jim, so much, and thank you for your leadership in our state. And it's great to be with all of you today. I'm going to go into screen share here in just a second. Alrighty, so Coalfield Development is an organization that I founded in the summer of 2010. So I'm born and raised in West Virginia. I love this place. I owe a lot to this place, and yet I've always had a strong sense that we're just not achieving our full potential as a state. I feel like we have wonderful people, hardworking people, talented people, creative people. We have a lot to offer, and yet by being so dependent on this one industry, it's really held us back, and it's really made us vulnerable in a lot of different ways, certainly environmentally, but also economically. It's been a mistake to put all of our eggs in this one basket. And so, I think a lot of us know the statistics, and I try not to spend too much time on the statistics, but and even before COVID, the economic reality is a tough one, really for all of North America. We have some of the highest poverty rates, high rates of addiction, a lot of environmental contamination, poor drinking water situations, and just low economic activity. And really, coal is at the root of these economic and social problems, being so dependent on one industry, on an extractive industry, which really crowds out a lot of other smaller businesses and other entrepreneurs. And so it's taken several generations to find ourselves in the hole that we're in, and it's going to take a while to claw back out of it. But in trying to get to our full potential, I think it's really important that local people be empowered to be the entrepreneurs and to be the leaders and to be the innovators. We need support for sure, but at Coalfield Development, we really try and honor the strength and the grit and the grace that we do have here. And so that's why we're called Coalfield Development. We're trying to develop the coal fields to be something more, and eventually we may need to change that name. But for now, we do feel like coal, there's so many drawbacks that we all know, but the workers should be honored. The workers only mine the coal because there was demand for it, and they've worked hard to power a lot of the development in this country. And now we have to reinvent ourselves, and we know that. But we want to honor the hard work that's gotten us where we are. So we're primarily based in southern West Virginia. We do have some partnerships in Kentucky, Ohio, Virginia, and Pennsylvania as well. At Coalfield Development, it's really about transformation of places and people. So our vision statement is Appalachian Places and People, realizing their full potential, power, and purpose. So we feel like every person has a unique potential that's special for them, and a power within them that we want to help realize, and a purpose that's unique to them and to their strengths and their personality and their experience and their environment. And so we do economic development, but really it's human development. It's about creating a really supportive environment. We create jobs, but it's more than just a job. It's really an opportunity to learn and grow as a person. So the main way that we develop our economy is we start social enterprises, and we try and start these social enterprises in sustainable, environmentally and economically sustainable sectors or industries. We helped start the first ever solar installation company in the southern part of the state. That's Solar Holler, if you look at the logos on the bottom of your screen here. We have a sustainable organic agriculture company called Refresh Appalachia, which is really important from a climate perspective. I mean, you all probably already know the food sector, ag sector is responsible for a huge chunk of the carbon problem. And so localizing that, making it more sustainable is really important for several different reasons. We have a t-shirt company called Sustain You, and make our shirts out of 100% recycled content. We have a woodworking business called Saw's Edge, and another called the Big Ugly Workshop in Lincoln County. And we have a construction business. It's basically green collar construction. We build affordable housing, but we do it green, energy efficient and solar powered. So our low income tenants have lower utility bills, which helps them out. And we're able to introduce new, greener and cleaner technology into the communities where we serve, and our workers develop those green collar skills that really are the skills of the future. So essentially we've created a family of social enterprises that we're modeling and showing very tangibly what a more diversified and a more sustainable economy can look like. Regardless of the industry, all of our crew members work this 33, 6, and 3 model. So we use these social enterprises to put unemployed people back to work. Former miners, sometimes it's younger people who wanted to be in the mines and never got the chance. Sometimes it's people who are on public assistance or in recovery and need a second or a third or a fourth or a fifth chance. And so we believe in people and we give opportunities to learn and grow. So the job is important. 33 hours a week of paid work. So that's the main sort of hook, is that we're a real employer. But because of all the chaos and the struggle and the challenges and the complexity that come with poverty, the job's actually not enough. There needs to be more support than that. So the 6 is for community college. All of our crew members are enrolled in a local community college working on an associate's degree. And the 3 is for personal development. We call it personal development. Some call it life skills or soft skills. But, working on resumes, money management, time management, emotional well-being, physical well-being, health issues, transportation issues. There's so many challenges for people in West Virginia trying to get up and stand on their own 2 feet. And so we try and provide a very holistic degree of support. So here's a couple of our trainees. So this is our 10-year anniversary, 2020. We've trained, this is actually up over 1,200 people now that we've trained at Coalfield Development, created over 250 new permanent new jobs, over 50 businesses. So we start our own businesses. We also invest in other entrepreneurs who are starting sustainable businesses. And through these investments, we've leveraged over $20 million new dollars of investment into Southern West Virginia. And we've revitalized through our construction business over 200,000 square feet of formerly dilapidated property. So we've had some good numbers, but really what I'm most proud of are the human stories of people from coal country. A lot of times I think the narrative about transition is that coal country sort of has to be collateral damage, that we do need to shift to cleaner energy. And we all agree on that. But that's just tough luck for these coal communities. And actually, what I think we're proving at Coalfield Development is in coal country, we have a lot of the skill sets that are going to be needed to retool our communities and our economy, to install the solar systems, to build the wind farms, to revitalize the buildings to be more energy efficient. These are the sorts of hands-on blue-collar skills that we have in Appalachia and that actually are going to be really valuable to the rest of the country, even in a post-coal society. And so it's inspiring that we see people not just get help here in coal country, but actually become leaders in designing and building the newer, cleaner economy. So that is Coalfield Development. I definitely wanted to leave time for questions. I'd love to get questions, and I'll come out of screen share here, and would love to stay in touch after this as well if you're interested.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing all of that. And we do have a few questions. First, this is probably a straightforward one. Someone just asked, where does that funding come from that you mentioned on that last slide?
Yep, it is quite a mix. The funding that I'm showing there is investment, follow-on investment dollars. So direct funding to Coalfield Development. We are a grantee of the Appalachian Regional Commission, which is federal money. We earn a lot of our own. So when the wood shop makes furniture, we get paid for that. When the solar crews install a solar system, we get paid for that. But the 6 and the 3, the personal development, that's never really going to pay for itself. So we looked at federal grants and then private grants as well. So we have over 40 different foundations that support our work, and about 3 or 4 different federal agencies at any given time that are supporting our work as well. So it's really quite a mix. We, in social enterprise, we talk about something called blended value. So in the for-profit sector, entrepreneurs talk a lot about value creation in a financial sense. What's your return on investment for each dollar put in? For a social enterprise, it's a social return on investment. So you do want to have a strong financial bottom line, but you also want to be able to show your improvement to society. And so we look at a blended value bottom line.
Great, thank you. So we had one question, several questions actually, about the Reclaim Act. So one person pointed out, it will invest $1 billion over 5 years to help folks transition to other technologies and jobs. Do you have thoughts or a stance on that legislation that you'd like to share?
Yes, very much for the Reclaim Act. I'm thrilled. I just saw in Jim's presentation that's going to be a priority for this group, which I think is fantastic. So I think the Reclaim Act is a huge opportunity. Also, the AML, there's something called the Abandoned Minelands Pilot Program, which has been helpful as well. So kind of freeing up and making the money a little bit more flexible, so that it doesn't just have to go, every dollar doesn't just have to go into the literal technical mineland reclamation, but it can go towards some of the job training or business development type activities that we do. So very, very supportive of the Reclaim Act. I think it's a huge opportunity for our region.
Okay, great. We also had a question from Mary in Wyoming, who is meeting with one of her senators and one of her representatives next week. And she said, I understand that they fear that Eastern coal will get the money from Reclaim and Wyoming won't. Can you just speak to that sort of concern and the need to make sure that all coal communities get the support they need?
Jim may know this issue better than me. I have heard this before, because the thing about the AML, abandoned mineland money, it's for mines that they call them pre-law, meaning they were before 1977. There were mines that were left unmitigated before 1977, which is when the Surface Mining Reclamation Act passed and created the AML fund, the Abandoned Minelands Fund. So I think since mining's a younger industry out west, they have less sites that are pre-law. One thing I would say, I think the environmental need, we do have a lot of sites that from all the way back to the 60s and 70s that still have not been mitigated and that are still contributing to dirty drinking water. So we do have a really big need that, we could use the help with. But I also think that, again, speaking to the flexibility, I think it's important to support Reclaim, but also that in the implementation of that, maybe it doesn't have to be quite so rigid as it has been in the past. And that's why I mentioned the AML pilot program, which is kind of loosens up some of the red tape. Jim, do you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, this is kind of a touchy issue in that Wyoming and Montana, I'm not sure who all, but some of the western states, they are what is known as certified states. And they certified at one point that they had cleaned up their sites and were no longer in need of AML funding they were going to take care of it themselves. So there is some set aside through Reclaim for those certified states, but it's not to the amount of what will be designated for mostly eastern states. So it is an issue. And it has been contentious somewhat, but like I said, they declared at one point that they had already reclaimed their places and that they were going to use the money for something else, basically.
Okay, thanks for expanding on that a little bit. We have one question about how can college interns get involved with coal revitalization work? Is there a way for younger folks to plug in?
I would say certainly. There's a lot of opportunities for young entrepreneurs here in West Virginia, actually. So I'm the founder of this organization. I consider myself a social entrepreneur. And so you can come to West Virginia and really have a great or Appalachia or coal country out west or anywhere, and really have a great quality of life, be near a lot of natural beauty, a little bit of a slower pace of life. And also there's opportunities for young people to start businesses or take over businesses that maybe somebody who's retiring, wants to keep going, but is looking to get out. So step one, I'd say look at entrepreneurial opportunities. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities as well. I know in West Virginia, there's an incredible history of activism. If you look at a lot of the unionization efforts here, the environmental efforts here, the recent teachers union strike, there's really brave people here, and a lot of big social issues of our time, West Virginians have played an outsized role in giving voice to. So there's a lot of opportunities for young people, and it's a really fun place to be, especially if you like to spend time outdoors.
That's great. So we have a question from someone who says, if I don't live in a community or even a state with a lot of coal mining, how can I sell the Reclaim Act to my representative this week? How might you approach it to someone that's not, doesn't have as much coal activity in their state?
So this is a big issue that I think a lot about. For one thing, Joe Manchin is the ranking Democrat on the Energy Committee. He's a senator from West Virginia, so he's somebody that I think he's kind of he's somebody we want to keep happy. I also think we're never going to get the sort of buy-in that we need to shift our economy to where we know it needs to go for the sake of our environment and our climate. If we can't not only bring our coal communities along, but actually create investments and opportunities for our coal communities to be leaders in what a newer, cleaner, greener economy looks like. So I'm not a political strategist by any means, but when we leave chunks of our country behind, when we write off huge swaths of our country, whether politically or economically or socially, it leads to the sort of deep divisions, that we have, the urban-rural divides that we have right now. So we need to all be looking out for each other and all be looking out for one another. So I think there's tactical reasons to do it. It just makes the campaign stronger when there's a willingness to invest in the communities that are frankly hurt the most economically by this. I can't emphasize enough the economic pain. Coal has been the main decent job provider, and the jobs have been decent. They've paid in the recent era, you could come out of high school and make $60,000-$70,000 as a coal miner, and those jobs are gone now, and people are really hurting. And you see something like an opioid epidemic set in, and it just creates a huge issue that affects the rest of the country. So there's tactical, strategic, economic reasons, but then I think there's also a moral argument that so much of this country's modern development was built off of coal and the backs of the miners who provided that coal. And we have an obligation not just to forget them and leave them in the dust.
Absolutely.
Could I add to that? Very well put, Brandon. And I think people that don't live in coal country tend to forget the contribution that coal miners have made and the coal communities. And I'd just also like to mention there are 66 co-sponsors on the Reclaim Act in the House. Something like 22 or 23 of them are not from areas that have coal. There are 4 co-sponsors from California. There is a co-sponsor from Hawaii. So, there is a need to recognize the contribution that they made. And it's exactly right. We can't move forward and just say, thank you for your contribution. We don't need you anymore. We need to recognize what they've done for us.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, Jim, and pointing out that the bill already has broad geographic support might be helpful in going into lobby meetings next week. Someone has asked, they're sort of clarifying, they say, aren't coal jobs often union jobs? And they're wondering if unions are on board with this transition. And then they're sort of asking about replacement jobs. So if you want to talk a little bit about the idea of maybe job retraining, kind of going into a little more into depth there?
They used to be. But really I'm 33. In my lifetime, the unions have really been busted. There's a few left, but not like it used to be. So they pay really, really well. Ironically, because of the success of the union, now the non-union mines pay really, really well to keep the unions out. But they have a lot of safety violations, and the benefits tend to be not as strong. The unions, it's a mixed bag as far as on the just transition. A lot of time recently the unions have kind of shifted to be against a lot of the environmental regulations, just because the fear and anxiety of the last few good jobs that are left in a community are vanishing, and it's just terrifying, understandably, for a lot of people. A lot of the replacement jobs, this is a big challenge in the transition, is they don't pay as well as coal did. Again, you could come out, you could have a high school degree, no higher ed, and make 60, 70,000 a year in the mines. And a lot of replacement jobs just are not up to par with that yet. We're working on it. The union, the solar company that I mentioned that we helped start did just unionize. Those are now electrical union, IBEW jobs. But this is going to be a long, hard fight to get back to where we were. And the tough reality is a lot of the replacement jobs don't pay as well as what coal did.
Sure. So we have just a couple minutes left, so I'll ask just two, I think, quick questions. Someone's wondering, what sorts of degrees do your community members pursue in those community colleges?
It's an Associates of Applied Science. So the beauty of that is it's applied learning. So some of their time working in the field actually counts for a credit. And then those 6 hours that I mentioned in the model are in the classroom, doing their core studies. So Associates in Applied Science, and then in whatever field, could be agriculture, woodworking, construction, depending on the business they're employed in. Got
it. Okay. And then there's lots of curiosity about scaling up this work. I think people are interested to see, would be interested to see this expand and grow. Can you?
Yeah, and it has started, we started in very humble in one county, and we're now working throughout Southern West Virginia. Our model is being replicated in some Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky communities. So I think the beauty of the 33, 6, and 3 is it is replicable. If you have the community college on board, we can share our curriculum that we use for the 3. And then you just need a local entrepreneur who's bold enough to take the risk and start the business. And I think it's a highly replicable model. And we're a community-based organization, so we actually don't want to open up a bunch of other satellite offices. We want to support folks from the bottom up that know their own community the best.
Sure. Okay, and then final question. Brandon, does your organization have a website that people can check out? And similarly, if folks want to learn more, can they reach out to you somehow?
Yes, of course. So I'll put I have my screen share up. It's the website's coalfield-development.org, coalfield-development.org. My email's bdennison, B as in boy, D as in dog, ENNISON, at coalfield-development.org. I love to get emails from folks. I love to learn about other coal communities. I just got an email last week from someone in coal country in Mexico. Got another one in somebody in Germany. As we talk about this just transition, empowering coal communities to become leaders in that transition is actually an issue of global importance. And we need to figure this out if we're going to move as fast as we need to move on the climate change issue.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. And thank you, Jim, for facilitating this and setting all this up. We really appreciate all of the work that you're both doing to make sure that coal communities are taken care of as we transition into the new clean energy economy. And to everyone who is attending this session, this is the end of this breakout track. Thank you all for sticking with us and for being here. And now we invite you to join us back in the closing plenary session. So the link is here on the screen, cclusa.org/2020-conference. So again, that is the closing plenary session. It will start in 10 minutes. And we'll be hearing from Dr. Danny Richter, who's our Vice President of Government Affairs, and Adrian Rafizadeh, who is one of our young conservative volunteers. So both of them will be in that closing plenary, so please do join us over there. And thank you so much for your time and attention this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.